Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Now, in the last couple of weeks or so, I've been trying to come up with some interesting animations so that I can teach you the more fun parts of iOS development. And what I've been able to come up with here is what you're seeing in the left side of your screen in the two simulators, the iPhone 8 Plus as well as the iPhone 10 in the middle right over there. So this is what I'm going to refer to as the Facebook Shimmer application or animation, and you can typically see this on the YouTube website as well as the Facebook application for your iOS devices. And so if you are having a hard time seeing exactly what the animation is, I'm going to try to explain to you what's going on, and then we'll look at Photoshop over here so that you can have a better picture as to what exactly the animation is. Alright, so let's kind of begin with the Shimmer text over here. And basically the trick behind this application or the animation is to first show a darker version of what you're going to animate in the background over here. So we have some dark text, and we simply animate a white shiny version of that from the left side all the way to the right side over here using something called a gradient layer mask. So there is a white version of the dark text right on top of it, and we animate a mask from the left side to the right side, and that mask is actually rotated like 45 degrees to the, I guess, clockwise direction. Alright, so if you apply that same trick, you can achieve animation that's very similar to what you're seeing in the iPhone 10 simulator over there. So that's the idea that we're going to actually try to implement in today's video, and I'm going to explain to you exactly what we need in terms of the animation by using Adobe Photoshop over here. And for me, typically I actually prototype out my animations using Photoshop so that I can see exactly what I need. So here we go. So right here we have a Photoshop file, and we have a couple of layers. So we have the background over here, we have this white thing that we really don't need, and the more important thing is the actual text over here, and this is the dark version of our text. And so if I duplicate this layer by hitting Command J, we'll get the exact same copy over here. I'm going to change the font color to something really bright like this white color right over there. So now we have two layers. We have the background layer over there, and then we have the shimmering layer right over there. So if I drag the sim layer all the way on the right side, you should be able to see the animation a lot easier. And there we go. So how exactly do we achieve this animation with this gradient mask? Well, first let me show you what a mask looks like. So if you create a new layer in Photoshop, you can use this gradient tool over here and start drawing on your layer to get this mask or this gradient to kind of look like whatever you want it to be. And so that's how you create a gradient. Let me just hide that. And instead of using a new layer, I'm going to use a layer mask over here, and you can start drawing that same gradient. Now the white portion of your mask is actually what's going to come through in terms of your layer over there. So this is the white text layer. And so if you draw a really skinny gradient, that is what you get. All right, so if you draw a diagonal gradient, which kind of looks like that, and you move the actual gradient by using the move tool over here, you can kind of see the shimmer animation like so. Okay, so those are basically the three things that we need in order to achieve this animation. So why don't we go ahead and hop inside of Xcode and see how to translate all of this into code right now. Okay, so it looks like we are ready to begin the coding session for today's video. And what I have already created is a single view application, which kind of looks like this over here. I'm going to start off by running this application to present you the white view controller class, which is this guy over here. And there we go, we have our white screen, and this means that we are ready to start coding inside of our application. Now let's take a look at what we need to do first inside of our animation over here. And the first thing we need to do is to create a dark background and then put some text on top of it, kind of like this over there. All right, so pretty easy first couple of steps. And why don't I do all of this in code, because it's super easy to do it that way. And the first thing you'll do is to create a view background color like that. And I'm going to use a UI color constructor with the parameters of white and alpha. and the white will be 0.1, and the alpha will be 0.1. I think I mean 1 for the white, like so. All right, so if you run your application now, you'll have the darkish background that kind of looks like this, and that looks pretty darn good. And now we are ready to create our dark text label. All right, so I'm just going to create a new variable called dark text label, and we will use a UI label, so pretty easy to create that. The dark text label has the text of something like Shimmer. And then the next thing we need to do is to make sure the dark text is actually visible with some kind of text color. And let's use a UI color of white for now. So I'm going to use full white of 1 and alpha of 1. And the next thing we need to do is to modify the font of this label to something relatively large. So I'm going to use a system font size of, let's use the value of 80. That is pretty big. And finally, we can add it to the view controller's view subview with add subview, and we will use dark text label over there. Now, if you try to run this application, you're not going to see that label because the frame on it is not there. So if you run it, that's what you get, just a black screen. I'm going to specify a pretty arbitrary frame on it, and let's use a CG rect like so. Now this guy has 4 parameters, and let me just pop in a couple of values with view frame width and a value of, let's say, height of 400. So it's basically going to have a full width like that and a height of 400. All right, so that is our Shimmer text so far. And the last thing I would like to do is to fix the alignment with text alignment like that, and use the enumeration value of center, and it'll help you pop that guy in the middle of your view controller screen. And so that's what we have, and that is a very good start for our application. And as you notice, the background text right there, the dark text, is actually relatively dark. So I'm going to modify the text color over here. And so let's use the text color of something really dark. So let's use a value of 0.2, and we will try to run this right now. So remember, this is the darker text, darker text label in the back, and that's what we have. And now we are ready to create the white version of this that sits right on top of it. So in other words, it's the white version, which is this guy. So pretty much this thing over here, this is the white version of the text. And I will do some copying and pasting, which is always pretty dangerous, but just for today's video, we are going to do that. And so this dark text, we will modify the actual name to be shiny. So shiny, I think that's how you spell it. Nope, just one N. And a shiny text label. So paste that there, 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 and there, and one last time over there, and also over there. So the only difference I'm going to modify for the shiny text label is to use the text color of white. And as soon as I run this, hopefully we will see the white version on top. And that's exactly what we are rendering out inside of our view controller. Okay, so those are the first 2 components that we need. The last thing that we kind of actually have to build out before our animation is ready to go is the gradient mask that is kind of this diagonal white shimmer on top of that text over there. Okay, so the first question that you might be having is, how exactly do we draw a gradient inside of Swift code? Well, it is actually pretty easy if you know the code. So pretty easy if you know the code to draw a gradient. And so if you don't know, you will learn right now. So let's say let gradient layer equals some kind of CA gradient layer, and just use an empty constructor over there. And let's see, gradient layer has 2 properties that we really need to mess around with. So the first one is this colors property, and the second property is this locations property. So let me just use an array for the colors, and if you look over there, it's a any array property, and this guy really needs to be a UI color dot white and CG color. And for the second color, I'm going to use a black color like that. And so I'll show you what this means once I type all this code out. The location, I'm going to use 0 and 1. And then finally, you need to say something like view.layer add sublayer. And I'm going to use the gradient layer like that. I believe if you run your code right now, you won't see the actual gradient. So let me just confirm that. And the last thing you need to do is to set the frame on your gradient layer. I'm going to use the views bounds or view frame. Doesn't matter so much, but once you set that up, you will see your gradient inside of your screen right over here. So if you don't exactly know what these values are doing, basically you have the white color and the black color all the way down here specified by your colors array. The locations of 0 is where the white color starts, and the 1 is where the black color ends for the actual view frame or the gradient layer frame. That's kind of why you are seeing this effect over there. Okay, so that is pretty darn good. If you modify this to be the clear color and you modify this to the white color, hopefully you will be able to see something a little bit different. And let's see what we get inside of our simulator. And up here is the clear color. That's why you kind of see the background and also the shimmer text. And now the white color is the value all the way down there. So the next thing we would like to do is to make sure that this gradient is a little bit smaller and it only covers the shimmer label. So instead of using the views frame, I'm going to use the shiny text labels frame instead. And we will kind of shrink the gradient to be 400 pixels tall. And that's what we have right now. So that's the first step in creating our gradient layer mask. And the next thing we want to do is to actually rotate this gradient a couple of degrees to the right, or clockwise, I believe it's called. And the other thing we need to do is to make sure that the gradient is actually white in the middle instead of the end over there. So why don't I change the gradient color first so that it's more obvious what's going on. So I'm going to make it clear on the top, white in the middle, and clear all the way at the bottom. So let me show you how to do that inside of the code over here by introducing a third color of UI color clear.cg color. And over here, let me use a value of 0.5. So running this right now, at the 0 value, which is the top, we'll have clear. In the middle, 0.5, we'll have the white. And then for 1, which is down here somewhere, we will have the clear color. So this is clear, white, and clear. All right, so make sure you use the CG color property. So let's see, if you are following along, make sure to use CG color. I won't be surprised if someone posts a comment down below that says it doesn't work, and the reason is because they're not using CG color, so make sure to follow that. And here we go. Let's try to rotate this guy so that it is about 45 degrees off axis to be diagonal like that. And the way you do this is to apply a transform on your gradient layer. So let's use the gradient layer transform property, and I'm going to move the screen down a little bit further so that you can see it. So transform needs to equal some kind of CA transform 3D property, and I'm going to use this class or this constructor called 3D make rotation. So this has 4 parameters on it, and the way you read this is you want to rotate your layer by a certain degree or certain angle, and you want to rotate it about a certain axis. And I'm going to rotate it by the z-axis, which is kind of coming at you in the positive direction, and it kind of goes inside of the screen in the negative direction. All right, so for the z-axis, I'll use a value of 1, and for the value of x and y, we'll just use the value of 0. Now the next thing you need to figure out is how to actually get the angle over here. So you might want to, attempt a value of 45 over there, but I don't think that really works. So this over here is expecting, I think, radians, but I guess that's kind of 45-ish degrees. I don't think that's a complete diagonal. If you want to actually get the angle correct, you want to apply this little bit of math So let's say 45 times CG float.pi divided by 180. All right, so make sure to use that math if you are interested in achieving the perfect angle of rotation, and you should be good to go here. So that's a perfect diagonal from over there all the way down to about that corner. All right, so that's pretty good so far. And the final thing that we need to actually do here is to turn the gradient into the mask for our shiny text label. So what I mean is the gradient mask over here is only showing the white text that's on the top over there. And so we sort of want to achieve that same effect, right? So the gradient mask is responsible for showing the white text. So let's see how we can actually do that by going into the code all the way down, all the way over here. So the first thing I will do is to comment out that last line because I don't really want to add it to the view's entire subview hierarchy. Instead, I'm going to say shiny text label dot layer dot mask equals gradient layer. And so we are going to run this now. And the moment that you run this, you should be able to see what's going on. In the middle of the text over here, you'll see that it is a little bit brighter than the left and right edge. If you modify the darker text label to be something, let's say 0.15, maybe that's a little bit too dark, but this is going to make it a little bit more apparent as to what's going on. So middle is bright, left and right edge is dark. So we are almost complete with the animation here. So I'm going to bring in the simulator again. And we're basically animating this gradient mask from the left side of the screen all the way to the right side of the screen, and it's pretty much repeating in a continuous loop. So I will show you how to do that right now by going back into the code here. So let's head down to, like, let's say line 47. And so what do we want to do? Well, why don't we apply some kind of gradient layer and add something called a CA animation for some kind of key. So let's first figure out what exactly is the animation, right? So let's declare the animation right below, and let animation equals something called a CA basic animation. So being basic isn't always bad. So we will use that inside of this bit of code. The key path is actually really important. And the key path for our animation is going to be transform.translation.x because we want to transform the layer from the left to the right side, which is also known as the x-axis. And the animation has a couple of properties we need to set. The first property is the from value. The next property is the to value that you want to animate from and to. And let's try to set the from value to be view frame.width, and I'll pop in a negative on the left side. So that means it's going to start somewhere over here, I suppose. And the to value is going to be view frame.width, which is all the way on the right edge of the screen there. Okay, so I believe that's all we need, but to make this a little bit more friendly, why don't we introduce a repeat count of, I believe we can say float.infinity, and pop in the animation right below for the key. Doesn't matter, just some key, and run this code right now. And I believe the animation is going to be a little bit fast, but hopefully we'll see kind of what we need to get going with right here. Okay, so as you can see, the animation is a little bit fast and definitely a little bit seizure inducing. So the way to slow down the animation is to set something called the duration property on it. And if you just pop in a value of 2, your animation will last for 2 seconds. And so running your code now, you'll see that the shimmer is a lot cleaner and it kind of flows in and out like so. Now, I believe the text is a little bit dark, so if you want to pop it back up a little bit in terms of the alpha, so dark text label, you can modify that back to 0.2 or whatever color your heart desires. Just modify these properties to whatever you want, and you should be good to go there. Okay, so if you compare the two animations, you'll see that that's kind of what you have, and it looks pretty good. I believe the rotation of the mask is about 60 degrees in the negative direction. So if you want to modify that, you can do so. And that's the trick behind this animation. As you can see, some of these things that you can do in iOS development is pretty easy once you kind of think about it. Okay everybody, that is pretty much all I wanted to show you in today's video. And as you can pretty much see, the animations that you can achieve here is pretty amazing if you truly understand what to do with the Swift programming language. Now I want to propose to you a very small challenge here, and I want you to somehow figure out how to achieve this animation inside of the simulator. The technique used is very similar to what we saw in today's video, so definitely give that a try. Alright, so if you are interested in supporting what I do on this channel as well as learn how to build iOS applications, make sure to check out the couple of courses down in the description below as well. That's going to be it for today. I will see you in the very next video. Bye bye guys.